All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Shannon Lott. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Washington, D.C., and I am currently a student in the PhD program in counselor education and supervision.
My name is Jacob Hill. I am currently a student in the MA, the Master's in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, but I work as a drug counselor in New Mexico, working with the city on domestic violence cases and different, first offenders WI programs.
Awesome. Okay, Jacob, thanks for joining me today.
So much.
So, the first question I have for you is to describe yourself using three words.
3 words. Wow. Open to change.
Okay.
Open to change. Yeah,
Yeah, that's three words. I like how you did that.
that's right. I think one of the interesting things, both professionally and personally, that I've found through working in service fields
Yeah.
is that we are so much in any way 50% of the conversation. We have to be open to the fact that we need to grow alongside the clients that we're working with. And then we ourselves need to continue growing in our own right to be able to kind of find a way to empathize, connect, better serve individuals. And as a client comes in with a new problem, particularly in areas of counseling, I think it's really important that we look at figuring out how do we adjust and adapt to be able to meet them in a manner that is both appropriate and respectful.
Absolutely.
So I think it's integral, I think.
Yeah. That's a great segue into our next question. As you reflect on your career, what's your most significant accomplishment?
Most significant accomplishment. Um, let's see. I think it's tricky to say a significant accomplishment. And I think that that's my own issue with having problems of identifying my own growth
Yeah.
and like significance. But I would say that I I came from a background that was not based in counseling. I was not a clinical background. I went into art school thinking that that was the only thing I was good at, and saying, "Oh, well, if I'm really good at sculpture and I'm really good at drawing and painting and stuff like that, I'll just do that for my living. I'll just do that for my job."
Mhm.
And while I was good, it wasn't where my passion was. And so halfway through my first year, I kind of did a 180 and found a way of adjusting and making the program that I was in, that I had a scholarship and opportunities for, into something that would work for me. And I wound up graduating with an art therapy degree, or those backgrounds in alternative counseling, working with sand tray and art therapy and music therapy, those types of things.
Mhm.
So it was an ability to kind of restructure and recraft where I was going, and it put me in a really interesting position coming into the field. It gave me an interesting background and understanding that there are different ways of addressing things with clients. We can use different tools. And so I think simultaneously that the insight that came with that, and then also the ability to come at the whole conversation from a different perspective, I think is probably one of my areas that I would stand to say is a more significant accomplishment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you kind of also rolled into answering the next question too. The question is, what was your first job and how did it prepare you for your current role? So if you want to make
Mm,
more of a comment about that, I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit.
a little bit, yeah. So my first job, and I think it's interesting, I can divide it up into two, but my first like job ever was helping work backstage in a theater. My family are all in theater in areas and like that, and so I actually got a job helping backstage, and it gave a very interesting way in terms of team management and how to deal with individuals in crisis and how to deal with instances of crisis on your own.
Yeah.
And so that certainly I think prepared me in a unique way for that. My first job, however, in social services and in the service sector, was working with a food pantry in the south side of Chicago. And it was an opportunity again to be able to expose myself to different communities that might be served, either in more adjunct care or more specific care. I was working as the volunteer and space coordinator and manager, and so it was something where I was able to actually step in, and I actually helped to lead some of the groups that they ran. Some different social workers came through and ran some groups for things such as substance cessation or learning laws for squatters' rights and all that. So all of those different resource development tools really gave me an opportunity to introduce myself a little bit more to the field, and was one of the first connections I had when I went in to initially try to work as a call operator with suicide prevention. And I went through all the training as part of that, as part of they had everyone there trained. And I was all eager and excited. And it was one of those things that they ultimately got downsized. And so it was a shorter term lived assignment than I would have loved, but it was a really exciting opportunity. I think it really gave me a unique insight into the different populations that we might sometimes serve or that might be underserved.
Yeah. Yeah. What's something that you wanted to do that you have been able to achieve?
I've wanted to do that I have been able to achieve. I was lucky enough to participate in a conference with the Chicago School, to be able to participate alongside another peer of mine and then also a professor who had been really wonderful and really insightful, giving a lot of guidance and support, Dr. Robinson. And so that was really an amazing opportunity to be able to kind of be a part of that experience, to be a part of the research that goes into that work, to be part of the presentation of that. It's not something that I would have anticipated getting to do at my juncture in my academic career. But it was a really amazing opportunity to be able to grow in that way. And I think it gave me kind of a foray into what that type of space might look like in terms of doing those types of conferences. I don't necessarily know if that's the direction that I want to necessarily go, but in that same way of change, it's really important that we are constantly engaging in that growth ourselves. And so I think so that was really an amazing opportunity there to be able to kind of grow in that direction.
Yeah. What was your research topic?
So it was reconceptualizing and readdressing our approach to cultural competency, shifting away from a linear concept to more of a fluid and stage-based concept that individuals engage with, almost like emotional intelligence, where there are different areas that can be growth or areas of growth, where some areas might also be more of an area of accomplishment. So you don't necessarily hit a benchmark, but it's one of those things that you kind of constantly evolve through different interactions.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Okay, there's a quote that says, "People will not solve problems that they do not believe exist." What are your thoughts on that?
People won't solve problems they don't believe exist. I do think that makes sense. I think that certainly stands to reason, that we can't necessarily address something or approach something with an open mind that is non-biased, and we can't approach it in a way that is creative or adaptive if we don't ourselves have some belief that the problem needs to be addressed. I think we run into a lot of instances with the evolution of DSM-5 where things that previously were seen as neuroses or disorders are being adapted, are being adjusted in different versions that are being, revised. And so I think in that reflects a lot the growth and development of seeing things, that change. We ourselves need to say if there is a disorderly nature of thought, well, are we just going to label that as an issue, or are we going to try to address the underlying causes of it and maybe not pathologize it? We're not going to necessarily help someone who's suffering or living with something really challenging or has lived through something really challenging,
Right.
if we don't take a moment to consider why that might be impactful. So yeah, problems don't change if we don't believe them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's any area in our field in general where we're not addressing a problem because we haven't, as a profession, accepted that there's a problem there?
I think yes and no. I think there are ways where there are some lasting disorders. One thing I can really think of, and it's just the one that stands out for me, but the use of gender dysphoria disorder still but the use in a clinical manner where it needs to get used or is used for a billing perspective. So here's something that is a problematic in many ways diagnosis that is archaic, but that stands as a tool to further address and further connect individuals with care. And in our space of gender affirming care and the gender affirming care movement, here's a label that is simultaneously kind of deleterious, but then also is a tool to help individuals get the things that they need. So there's a really interesting dichotomy that goes on there. And on the one hand, to say, well, we should just get rid of this diagnosis because it's holding on to something that is not necessarily true. It's holding on to say that an individual who is transitioning is psychotic, or there's something wrong with their decisions or their need to do that. But then by doing that, the system that we're in, that the nature of the medical environment that we're in isn't prepared yet. Because if we do that, then we've now cut off the ability for an individual to get medical care or possibly gender affirming care. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an area where we kind of struggle. And I think it's an area where we can grow. But it's that same thing where the first step was identifying that the thing needs to change. The second step is actually doing something structurally to change it. And we aren't, I think, unified as a country enough to quite get there yet. Mm-hmm. So it calls us to play the system effectively. It calls us to find a way to make the system work for the individuals we're serving, rather than necessarily having it implicitly work for them.
Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts as we were talking.
Yeah.
Yep. I work inpatient and, and it's a freestanding psychiatric facility. So, when that comes up, it's very irrelevant. And so in terms of advocating for our patients, we're always telling the doctors, like, don't put gender dysphoria as a psychosocial factor. Like, that's not what that means.
No, it's what you're right. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely see where you're going with that.
And it's the traces of a lot of like MRNs, like the nature of how MRNs get cataloged is with the initial legal name and the amount of time it takes to change a legal name in a system. And so when the medical records then come through, even if an individual is able to get their preferred name on it, everything still goes through their legal name. Everything still goes through that.
Yeah.
And the amount of providers, a lot of providers, I think fewer now because I think a lot of changes happen, which is really exciting. But you see a lot of providers who are insistent to say, well, their name says this, and I have to use their name for continuity. Mm-hmm. I have to use the legal name on the documents that they have, and they need to sign for that legal name because that's their legal name, which is true.
Yeah.
But then that way of just the microaggressive nature of that,
yep.
You say, well, despite you even having a preferred name, understanding the fact that we enter in a lot of that information. What are the things that we can be doing to try to make it so that you're not bombarded by an inflexible system at every turn?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a long way to go there.
Right. And it's growth, like anything, it's growth. But
yes. What's the most common compliment people have given you?
No, I mean, I can't necessarily say this is always the case in my personal life, but I think a lot of people have commented on patience with me. I think I get a lot of comments with, clients and patients that I've worked with who appreciate the fact that I don't rush through a session. I don't try to rush them to an answer. I don't try to rush them to a purpose. Sometimes that means you're going to get stuck, and a client who is really needing to talk or really, maybe is ruminating on a thought, you do get, a little entrenched in that conversation sometimes. It maybe goes a little bit longer than you might want, or that you might have time for all the time, but that the importance is that there is someone who's wanting to listen to them. There's someone who's taking the time. And I think that I see that patience as a benefit. I see that patience as important, as integral, crucial to the whole relationship building process. So I've had that comment a couple times. Again, professionally, I mean, you drive with me on a highway, and it's a very different story. But
No.
but in that professional manner, I would say certainly that's one that really sticks with me. Is that patience, I think.
Do you think the people in your personal life would use a different compliment to describe you?
Maybe I would hope that it would be the same. But I do think that maybe the different compliment uh, might more come to the creativity side of it.
Uh,
I think that just because I don't work as an artist doesn't mean that I don't bring creativity into my life. And I think that a lot of that creativity comes into the manner by which I try to address different relationships. I try to really put an empathetic foot forward at all turns. And if that means that it takes me a little bit more time to try to reframe and rethink how I'm going to do something to make sure that there's a way of doing it that is being considerate or appropriate to the other person, I try to take that, but I try to not to be necessarily, I guess, limited by my own take on something, or the explanation that I have for it. I do try to think a little bit more about, well, how can I do this in a way that's going to be the most appropriate or the most efficient. And so, yeah, empathy, creativity. Yeah, I
nice.
hope.
Yeah, you hope.
I hope. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, knock on every piece of wood I have. But yeah. Yeah.
What present have you purchased for someone else that you were most excited to see them open?
Hmm. That one's, I like that one actually. What present did I purchase for someone that I was most excited for them to open? I would say when my partner and I recently had gotten together, we had been maybe married for about a year. We were still in the midst of moving from apartment to apartment, and there was a lot of transitioning happening. And we had existed off of, as any new couple does, a lot of the hand-me-downs that we'd found. So and so gave us some dishes, so and so gave us a plate, all that stuff. And so we were existing in an assemblage of other people's things. And for Eid, I had gotten her a gift of a painting, a painting that by an artist that she'd really liked. I commissioned it. I didn't tell her, but I commissioned it because I thought that she'd really like it. And it was one of those things where it was the first new thing that we effectively had.
Yeah.
The first thing that we got, the first thing that was maybe not a necessity in our life, but was something that got to be special. And it was really amazing to see that. I was really excited to see her open it and to see that be something that she enjoyed. It was something that has since been very prominently hung in our house. We design everything else around it.
Nice.
Where is the light so that this will look good, so that it will kind of pick up the light in that color. So it was also one of those things too, where it kind of broke that expectation of the thing that we do, the thing that we get is just surviving. It's like, no, this is a moment that we get to celebrate. And I think those moments of gratuity are really important.
That's awesome. That was
Yeah,
a really good answer.
thanks.
Are you a morning person or a night person?
I'm a morning person, but I work night shift.
Oh, how
So
does
that
that
is
work for
very
you?
interesting for me.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I do not, I am certainly someone who enjoys being up. My body regulates where when the sun is coming up, I'm awake. And then when the sun goes down, I fall asleep.
Yeah.
But recently I have started having to work in a manner, or working in a manner, not having to work, but working in a manner where I go in at 7 o'clock at night and I'm there for 12 hours. So it's been an interesting shift seeing the two. But yeah, I would certainly say morning person.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That must take some getting used to.
I've had to
Say the
change a lot
least.
of the vernacular for me, because technically I'm still a morning person, but I have to treat all the daylight hours as nighttime now. So
Right.
that when I wake up at 4 in the afternoon, I'm just really waking up early. It's the same as 4 a.m. Yeah. So
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That's quite a shift.
Uh,
What do you keep in the trunk of your car?
what do I keep in the trunk of my car? Tons of garbage. No. uh, no, I tend to keep a mech kit just in case. So like I just have a basic medical kit. Um, I usually keep shopping bags in the back of my car. Just in case you need to go do something with that. Um, Currently there is a tarp, the folded up tarp in the back of our car. Because we moved some plants and I have since forgotten to take the tarp out of the back of the car. But then I usually try to keep just in case, like, base necessities, where you never know if it's going to rain, you never know if it's going to get hot, you never know if it's going to get cold. So I fold a jacket up, a couple umbrellas just in case something happens.
Yeah.
And rope, because, again, you never know when you're going to need to tie something up or on the roof rack or something like that. So I have rope that hangs out, kind of just floats in the back of our car.
It sounds like you are prepared.
Yeah, I would like to think so.
Yeah. I mean, some of us only have like a case of water in the trunk of our car. So
Well, see, but that's my issue, is that I never remember to drink water just as is. It'll be, midnight and I'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't drink anything today. Or like, oh, I'm just driving along and it's like super hot. All of these heat flashes that have been going on across,
yeah.
across the country lately, um, have been, you really have made you notice when you're dehydrated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but again, preparation, I never bring water anywhere. So I probably should get on top of that.
Maybe that's something to add.
Maybe that's Maybe that's like, yeah, put a case of water in the bag.
Although I don't know about leaving it out in the heat, whether it's gonna taste all that good anymore.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. All right, we're on question number 10.
Okay.
Out of all your travels, what is the best dinner you have ever eaten?
All of my travels, what is the best dinner I've ever eaten? I would say, um, ironically, Denver.
Yeah.
In Denver, Colorado. I there was a place we were driving through, and there was a place that was open, happened to be open a little bit later. We were able to get really great, like vegetarian fare. It's hard to sometimes find good vegetarian food that doesn't necessarily just take the meat out and give you the leftover vegetables.
Yeah, and it's just like cut up Brussels sprouts. Yeah.
Right. It was really great, actually. It was called Watercrest or Watershed. But it was great. Again, I mean, it's like they made their own, like, vegan gravy, for, the potatoes and all that. Potatoes were great, so it was really a surprising quality of food, for that time. I think it was a combination too, where it's, when you're really hungry and anything is going to taste good, but then
Yeah.
it was good food that tasted even better.
Yeah.
So I would say, ironically, that's probably one of the better meals I've had in a very long time. Right in the backyard, so it's like, yeah.
Let's get into this meal more. What was it?
Sure. So we split two things because we weren't sure what was going to be, what was going to be the things we wanted to try.
Okay.
So we got a biscuits and gravy that had a vegetarian sausage and then the vegan gravy and house-made biscuits. We got it was like a polenta hash. So it was a chopped variety of root vegetables, a polenta, a polenta patty. So like getting that grits quality. And then the whole thing had this like almost sriracha mayo-esque drizzle. So it had something that was a little bit warm and a little bit creamy. But then all of that was kind of then garnished with, these like really amazing roasted potatoes. And because the potatoes were so good, we just got a second thing of just these like roasted side potatoes that were like, turned in different like scallions and all of that. And they made their own like garlic aioli that you could like dip it in. It was amazing. It was very
That
good.
sounds so good.
Yeah, it was very good. I was very surprised. And again, it was one of those things where I was just expecting something basic, but it was by far exceeded many of my expectations.
Yeah, it sounds like a great
So,
meal.
right.
All right. Well, that's all 10 questions.
All right. Thanks so much, Shannon.
Thank you.